Okay, pop filter. Pop pop. Check. Last episode's progress. Check. Functioning computer. Oh no! Alright, it's been like a month since the last video and I think I've finished playing around with this guy enough to start with the rest of the game. Actually, just one more quick one. Hey! But seriously, time to start this character controller. It's been way too long. Okay, so first off we're going to make two animations and we'll pair that up with our character controller later on. I'm going to make an idle and a walk animation. I could probably do a run animation, but I'm just going to stick to the two for now. We'll do the rest later. We just need to get him working. And walking. Alright, so here's the idle animation. Not much to look at. I could probably add in some shoulder movement for breathing or something, but it's good enough for now. And here's the walk. Oh, never mind that. Here's the walk animation. It looks a bit weird if you stare at it for too long, like I have been while I've been animating it, but it'll do once again for now. I can always fix these things up later, and I probably will. Just remember that it might look terrible zoomed in like this, but if you zoom out real far, it starts to get a lot better. See? It looks perfectly fine from here. But now that we have these two animations, we can chuck them into an animation controller, and I've added in a move speed variable here that will control the transition between the two. Pressing play mode, you can see that this will work as such. As a quick side note, I've actually redone some of the code to do with the IK movement. I was getting a small error and it turned out that I actually needed to be getting angle B rather than angle A from the triangle. It was such a small error that it only showed itself in a certain set of circumstances, and I ended up rewriting a lot of stuff before I worked out that that was the answer. Out of curiosity, let's see what happens if we use angle C. I failed to see how this was unexpected. But that aside, we'll start the character controller now, and that means playing around with physics. We'll drop a rigid body 2D on him, a box collider, scale that to the right size, make a random block, drag that in, scale it out so we have a platform, and add a box collider to that, and we're done. And that is just a little bit of a problem. The easy solution to this is to just never rotate the player this way, I said after looking into the code and then deciding it wasn't worth fixing it. But to be honest, we don't actually need to rotate the player this way, so it's all good. Who can say where the road goes? And now we can finally get on to making the character controller script. So jumping over the code, I'm going to attempt to walk through this as I do it. This will probably have a bunch of jump cuts. And I've not done this before, so who knows, maybe I'll just scrap this entire idea. Either way, you'll find out in a couple of seconds whether you get a montage or you don't. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is make a fixed update function, which if I remember correctly is either the best or the worst place to do stuff for physics. I'm pretty sure it's the best. And then I'll make two floats, one called horizontal, equal to 0, and one called vertical. And I'll immediately fill them with values from input.getAxis. Okay, now at the top I'm going to create a reference to the rigid body that's attached to the controller. I'm well aware that you can just type rigid body and bring it up there like that, but I believe that that takes a little while, whereas doing it this way the very first time you need to get it is not as bad, but I might be wrong about that. Either way, this is the way I'm doing it now. And just to see that everything is working, we can just change the velocity of that to a new vector without inputs. And save that and give it a test. Pro tip, it helps if you actually attach the script to the character. And we have movement. It's not the type of movement we'll want, but it's good for now. Okay, so now I'll change the inputs to get access raw to get the raw values coming from the keyboard and move all of this down into a handle movement function. I'm going to change the input values into private variables, the private bool for checking whether he's grounded, and do a physics2d.raycast to get the ground. And with a little help from Google, I've remembered how to do raycasting. It's like this. And now as you can see, we can tell when he's grounded or not. And now that I've done that, I've only just noticed that there's a physics problem here. We're not connecting with the platform properly. And I believe that's because we're working at a scale that's too small, so we need to up the size of these sprites. Oh god, the animations and everything else are broken now. Ah, god. And everything is working again. We can breathe deeply. Now back to the coding. The first thing I'm going to do is add a float for movement speed and set it to something like 10. We'll fiddle around with that later. In the handle movement function, we can get rid of what we have here, and instead we're going to make a new vector, call it horizontal velocity or something that's descriptive, and for the x we'll put our horizontal input, and for the y nothing. And what we're going to do is we're going to lerp our current velocity between what it currently is and this new horizontal velocity. And we'll do time.deltaTime times a variable that we'll add underneath movement speed, and we'll call it something like speed change speed, and I'll set it to 5, but we'll fiddle around with that later as well. I'm pretty sure you use time.deltaTime in fix update, but I could be wrong about that. And we are done. So now we should have something like this. I also added a capsule collider. That'll be good for when we're working on things that aren't flat. So down here I'm going to make a new function called flipPlayer, as well as a new bool called isRight. That can be private. And in this function we'll check if the player is moving right and they're not facing right, then we'll flip them to the right. If they're moving left, then we'll flip them to the left. And now we have some side to side movement. Actually we always had that. Now we have some looking movement, or just not even movement, just direction change. Either way, pretty good. There is some jankiness happening with his head and shoulders, not the shampoo, his actual head and shoulders. And I think that's probably a thing left over from my screw up earlier. Oh god! So I'll fix that up. I fixed it up, and now we can continue. We'll make a reference to the animator, and at the bottom of fixed update, we'll set a float in the animator called horizontal velocity to our horizontal velocity. And over in the animator, we'll rename move speed to horizontal velocity. And now the walk animation should start when we move. Seems to only work going right though. I know why that is. Need to add a mathf.absolute, and now it works both ways. The speed I selected at random for him walking is almost perfectly matching up to the animation, so that's worked really well. There's a little bit of tweaking we could do, but it's good for the while. So we're going to add in some jumping. Over in the code we'll add in some new variables. First off, public float jump speed. Scrolling down we'll make a new function called handle jump, and have it run underneath handle movement. In the function we'll do it if input.getButton jump, and also if grounded is equal to true. And then all we'll do is we'll change the y value of the character's velocity to the jump speed. And that has this result. Not perfect, but it's getting there. We could obviously increase the gravity, but I've never had luck using Unity's default gravity in situations like this, so instead I'm going to implement my own method. It's probably not the smartest way to do it, but it's worked for me so far, and I can't see it backfiring anytime soon. Come back to this video if it does and tell me about it. Private float, current gravity, public float, min gravity, max gravity. If we're grounded, current gravity equals min gravity. Else current gravity lerps to max gravity via gravity change speed, which is a variable I also just made. Then in handle jump, which we should rename to handle up and down or something, if we're not grounded, then the rigid body velocity lerps between the current velocity and a new velocity with the same x and the current gravity as the y at a speed of 20. I should make a variable that we can change for that, but we'll do that later. Negative current gravity. And messing around with those values, you can get something that looks pretty good. This video is getting a bit on the long side, so I'm going to keep on playing around with it off camera, and I'll come back to you probably when we're done with the character controller. And now we have some walking, we have some running, we have some crouching, and we have some jumping. We're maybe not done, but this is a good place to stop for now. I'll talk about the changes and the fixes I made later in another episode, but I think this is a good amount of progress we've made since the beginning of this episode, and I think it's a good place to stop for now. So, without further ado, I'll see you in the next episode, where we'll do some customizing. By which I mean we're adding hats and more. My new computer has just come, so
First try.
Ah!